It's that time of year. You're back to work. And for many of you, it is time to have your annual performance appraisal meeting. Now, while many performance appraisal meetings tend to happen at the beginning of the year, there are companies who do conduct them later on in the year. Regardless of whether you're having that meeting now or in a few months, depending on how your company and your manager treat these performance appraisal meetings, might leave you feeling that these are more like a check the box activity rather than a true opportunity for your professional development. And that might leave you feeling resentful. If you're a manager, how you conduct your performance appraisal meetings with your direct reports says a lot about how invested you are in the process, and more importantly, how invested you are in them. Well, in this episode, I am going to walk you through some of my best practices to help you prepare for and conduct your performance appraisal meeting. And this information is relevant whether you're getting your performance appraisal or you're the manager or leader and delivering one to your team. And I'll also share some guidance with you on how to deal with any resentment you're feeling before, during, or after the performance appraisal process. Welcome to episode 139 of the Mid-Career GPS podcast. I'm your host, John Nerrill. I'm here to help you find a job you love or love the job you have using my proven 4-step formula. Before we get into today's episode, if you're looking for a way to jumpstart your career search and you want to connect with me more, here's a way you can do that. On my website at johnnerrill.com, you can get a free copy of my new guide called 5 Mistakes Mid-Career Professionals Make and Need to Stop Doing. On the website as well, you'll find other ways on how you can connect with me, either through my blog and this podcast, and learn more about me and what I do, especially if you are interested in one-on-one coaching. Also on the website, and I'm telling you here first, on Tuesday, January 17th at 12 noon Eastern, I am going to be hosting a free webinar called Preparing for Your Annual Performance Appraisal, What to Do Before, During, and After to Ensure Your Success. Now, this is a live webinar, and one of the things I love about doing live webinars is I always have time for Q&A. But if the time isn't good for you, I want you to register for it anyway, because a replay of the webinar will be available for a limited time. So check the show notes. You can also find more information about it on LinkedIn, and I will also have it posted on my website. But mark your calendars, Tuesday, January 17th at 12 noon Eastern for a free webinar to help you with your upcoming performance appraisal. So why do a webinar after this podcast episode? Well, I want to talk on something very specific with you about these performance appraisals, and it has to do with resentment. And it's one of those things that we don't talk a whole lot about. So while the webinar is going to go into more of the preparation and how to deal with different stages of the performance appraisal before, during, and after, this podcast episode, I want to talk with you about the resentment that sometimes comes up during these meetings. So as a starting point for us to ground our conversation today, a performance appraisal is a mandatory evaluation and meeting about how well you have satisfactorily met the competencies, the goals, and objectives that the company has set forth for someone in your position. It is a compliance meeting in order to progress, monitor, and track progress. And in many companies, it often feels like a check the box type activity. And I'm here to tell you that my wish is we get away from that. We really treat these meetings as another meeting that you have with people on your team, or another meeting that you routinely have with your boss or your supervisor to talk about what's working well, what isn't, what you want to learn, and what you need to work on. When I was managing teams, and I was also leading a group of managers as well, I always wanted these meetings to be something more than that check the box kind of activity. And I realized across various organizations where I worked that sometimes the organizational culture is one where it's very difficult to get beyond that. But I would tell my managers and my leaders that these are your meetings. You can either continue to perpetuate a belief and a thought that these are just check the box meetings, or you can truly make them meaningful for the people on your team. One of the ways I did that was ensuring that I modeled for them what I expected out of a performance appraisal meeting. Now, I realize that this doesn't happen everywhere, and not everybody is fortunate enough to work with a great boss who is truly going to take their time for these meetings. But as I've been having conversations with clients and looking back on some of the more downloaded episodes of this podcast, this is one that always generates a lot of traction. Because as people go into their performance appraisal meeting, they want it to be a worthwhile experience. Regardless of whenever your meeting happens, the first thing I want to share with you today is that this shouldn't be an exceptional or an extraordinary or different kind of meeting. In my opinion, a really good manager is conducting performance appraisal meetings every single time they check in. As you're measuring and evaluating progress on core competencies and skills and abilities, you should be doing that every single time you meet. So when you come to the performance appraisal meeting, it's really just an opportunity to have that year in review and look back on everything you've done. So I want you to take a moment right now and think about, what are your thoughts heading into your appraisal meeting? So you are the employee and you're going to meet with your boss about your performance over the past year. What are your thoughts on that? Do you look forward to that meeting? Are you anxious or nervous about having that meeting? Are you concerned that there are some things you didn't do well, or you didn't meet expectations, or you had a hiccup or an obstacle during the year that you couldn't get over, and you're afraid you might get quote unquote dinged during the performance appraisal? Are you worried that there might be something said that's a surprise or a shock to you? Your thoughts heading into those performance appraisal meetings drive how much you prepare and you fully show up for those meetings to make the most out of them. Are you thinking that you're going in to have a conversation, or are you thinking you're going in to just listen and be spoken to? I'm a firm believer that performance appraisal conversations need to be two-way streets. I worked for one organization where the team members were evaluated across a comprehensive rubric. And it was a 4-point scale for each particular goal and objective. And once we got that rubric and it was shared with everybody, we took a full meeting to work through exactly what each of those performance metrics looked like across the rubric. And I did that with my team because when it came time for me to have their performance evaluations, and in this particular organization, we did them in May, they were going to come fully prepared because as they went to do their self-evaluation, they knew exactly what was expected. All they had to do was cite the evidence, show me any particular artifacts or material that was relevant to their work as they were stating their case. And we agreed on what they were evaluated on. If we didn't, if they thought they should have been rated higher and I thought they should have been rated lower, we went back to the rubric and looked at that. There's no surprises. There are no gotchas in these types of meetings. As a manager, as a director, as an executive, or a leader within your organization, I can't tell you enough how strongly I believe that how you show up for these meetings is something that lasts with your direct reports, your employees, your team members for the entire year. They don't forget it. If there's one conversation they remember, it's going to be this one. So you better do a really good job of facilitating this meeting with them. And as you think about the performance meetings you have with your bosses, you remember those meetings as well. So if you work for somebody that doesn't treat these meetings with the same importance or relevance or priority as you would like them to, or as you model for your team, what do? Not everyone is fortunate enough to have a fantastic manager. I know throughout my career, there were people who I reported to that admittedly did better jobs than others. And there were some managers whom I went to my performance appraisal meetings and I was disappointed in the way they facilitated those meetings. If you're a high performer or a high potential, the last thing you want to hear in these meetings are, hey, you're doing a great job. Keep it up. Keep it going. Just keep doing what you're doing. People want targets. They want something to aspire to. They want to be elevated or have an opportunity to elevate their career and know what that looks like. And they look to you as their manager to give them that guidance and direction and not be merely told to go and look at some document from human resources about what they should be doing. This is where resentment comes into play. Because if you have a boss that isn't quote unquote the best, what do? You have to look at what you have control over and what you don't. And when it comes to dealing with resentment in this entire performance appraisal process, I want to offer and ask you, what exactly is it that you are resenting? Are you resentful of your boss? Do you wish you had somebody different? Do you wish they acted differently? Or did their job better, in your opinion? Are you resentful of the way your company facilitates these review processes? As I said earlier, a performance appraisal meeting should basically be just another meeting you're having regarding your performance, just as if you were having a regularly scheduled check-in meeting. So if you don't like the way your manager is facilitating these meetings, show up and facilitate them better from your point of view. Come in with better questions. Come in with questions that are going to facilitate a conversation between you and your manager around areas you want to be developed in. Where do you want to grow? How do you want to build your executive presence? Where do you want to grow as a leader? Where do you want to take on more project responsibilities? If you are resentful of the process, change it as best as you can. When I was managing a team in this one particular organization, we would go through the performance appraisal process, and I ran it accordingly as HR wanted us to. And then I would look at the people on my team and I'd be like, what's the one thing you really want to do this year? Because this is what we got to talk about. What's the one thing you're really curious about learning? You want exposure to? If you want that promotion, where's the skill gap? How do we work on that? I would have these conversations with people on my team because I was invested in their growth and development. I didn't want the people on my team to walk out of that meeting feeling resentful that I didn't do my job. Now, there were certain things that as their manager, I didn't have a whole lot of control over. For one, it came to salary. I spent the majority of my career working in organizations where people were beholden to a salary guide. They met expectations. They moved up to the next level on the salary guide. That's what their salary was. If they didn't like their salary, there was nothing I could really do about it. The only thing I could do about it was have a conversation with them that if they needed to make more money, then it was obviously a different position and where did they need to go? I've worked for other organizations where how much someone got paid was not my level. Those decisions were made at the people above me. So imagine sitting there with someone on your team and you tell them what their salary is going to be and they got promoted or they got a raise and they look at you and they go, I'm not happy with that. And the only thing I can say to them as their manager is, I know. Because in preparing for that meeting, I was preparing for those kinds of conversations. If you are resentful about your salary, if you are resentful about the bonus you got or the raise you didn't, and it wasn't to what you believe is appropriate for the value you provide to that organization every day, there needs to be a larger conversation around your compensation that needs to happen. And I offer it needs to start with you first. If you don't believe you're being fairly compensated, you need to get clean and clear in your mind about what you believe you're worth, where you have the evidence for that, and who are the people within your organization that you need to be talking to about that to see if anything can be done. Whether there is a bonus incentive or there is a pay adjustment. One of the biggest things that leads to resentment in the workplace is around salary, especially when you know someone who has the same title as you, who is getting paid more than you, but you believe doesn't do the same quality of work you do. That brings on a lot of resentment. What do you do about that? I offer that you've got to get clear and clean about your thoughts around the salary and what's going to make that better for you. So when you go talk to your leadership, you're clean and clear in your delivery, and that allows them to be clean and clear in their response. What are they going to say? More often than not, the first time you talk to them about it, there's going to be a follow-up meeting. Let me see what I can do. Or if they know they can't move you with your compensation, there have been other conversations that they're familiar with that I just can't move your salary. They may tell you no. And you walk away from that meeting, go, well, at least I know. I have walked into my boss's office and I have said, I'm pretty sure I'm never getting a bonus here or another raise. Am I correct? And I was told yes. At least I knew. Resentment is an emotion that when you ruminate on it, you perseverate on it, you play the scenario over and over and over and over again, it will eat away at you and it does no good. If you use that resentment to fuel any future decisions, about your career path as you build your mid-career GPS, whether it is within that company or outside of it. That is where you can leverage using resentment for a much better use. Resentment is something we feel. And when we feel resentful, what do we do with it? Do we keep it bottled up inside or do we say something about it? That's not for me to tell you what you should do about it. You have to do what is best for you in the circumstances that you have. There are times in the coaching relationship where we talk about resentment and what they want to do about it. What I have done when I have felt resentful in my career are my choices. I am someone where I will let something fester for a little while and then I just can't let it fester anymore. I've got to get it out. If something bothers me, you will know about it. It's just who I am because I don't want to keep it bottled up. I want to know what you're thinking. I want to know what you're feeling. I want to know what the result is going to be. If you're walking away from your performance appraisal and you are feeling resentful, something isn't right. Sit with that for a minute. If you had a performance appraisal meeting last year and you weren't happy with how it went, why are you still there? Yes, I know you need the job and I know you need the pay and everything. But are things really better this year? If they are, then there's obviously some work that you've done and you've done to make it better, hopefully. And if you have done, I want you to pat yourself on the back. If you had a performance appraisal meeting last year and things were promised to you, opportunities were supposed to be made available to you, experiences were supposed to happen and they did not, you might be feeling a little resentful. What do you do with that? Do you bring it up? Do you have a conversation about it? Do you put it back on the table for this year? I can't tell you how many times I have worked with people and talked with people, both in a coaching relationship and not, where they went into a performance appraisal meeting and they were told, oh, you're on track for a promotion. And they go to the next year's meeting. You know what they're told? You're on track for a promotion. And they're like, why the hell didn't it happen this year? Well, you're still on track for a promotion. That can leave you feeling resentful. You have to decide what you want to do with your resentment. So, if that happens to you, or when you go into your performance appraisal meeting, I want to leave you with this tip. This is some of my best advice, my best guidance for you, is that when you go into this performance appraisal meeting, be curious. Listen to what your manager says. Ask better questions. Ask questions that truly promote a conversation rather than abruptly end it. In other words, don't ask a question such as, how am I doing? Ask something like, over the last 12 months, you've asked me to lead this particular project. My focus on this project were A, B, and C. I'm curious from your point of view, how well did I do with each of those three targets? And the other thing is, if something is said in the performance appraisal meeting that catches you off guard, surprises you, even angers you a little bit, or even if it makes you joyous and elated, these three words, in my opinion, will serve you very, very well in that conversation. Tell me more. That's all you have to say. Tell me more. John, over the last 12 months, you've done a really good job here. I just want you to know I appreciate that. Tell me more. Don't say anything else. Tell me more. And if they go, excuse me, tell me what exactly it was that you're happy with my performance. What was the one thing you wanted to make sure I did this year that I did? Tell me more about that. If you approach these meetings from a place of curiosity, if you prepare questions ahead of time that truly facilitate a conversation, and you say every now and then, tell me more, you will have a performance appraisal meeting that will typically be better than the ones you've already had. You'll be more prepared with better results on the back end. And you will have greater clarity about your career as it exists within that organization, or clarity about where you're going to take it. The performance appraisal meeting is designed to help you be clearer about what your path is forward. And if there is anything I can do to help you with that, whether it be as your coach or to go back and listen to some previous podcast episodes, I am here to help you with that. If you're interested in one-on-one coaching, you can either fill out the form on my website or email me at john@johnneral.com. Don't forget to download that free guide I have called 5 Mistakes Mid-Career Professionals Make and Need to Stop Doing. And lastly, don't forget to join me. You are invited. You are personally invited, my friends, to join me for my upcoming free webinar on Tuesday, January 17th at 12 noon Eastern on Zoom, called Preparing for Your Annual Performance Appraisal, What to Do Before, During, and After to Ensure Your Success. I look forward to seeing you there. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with somebody who you know is going into a performance appraisal meeting and tell them about the Mid-Career GPS podcast. And lastly, I want you to remember this. We build our mid-career GPS 1 mile or 1 step at a time, and how we show up matters. Make it a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening to the Mid-Career GPS podcast. Make sure to follow on your favorite listening platform. And if you have a moment, I'd love to hear your comments on Apple Podcasts. Visit johnneral.com for more information about how I can help you build your mid-career GPS, or how I can help you and your organization with your next workshop or public speaking event. Don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me on social at John Neral Coaching. I look forward to being back with you next week. Until then, take care, and remember, how we show up matters.